causes the most grief, that actually elevate us to places that we never imagined we'd be. We don't want to go through any grief-related event that we've dealt with. But the reality is, grief is tantamount to growth. Welcome back to another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory Livestream. I'm Jay Lewis. I'm talking to you today about finding a way to turn worry into power to work to your advantage. That's what this show is all about. It's about taking your grief and your challenges, and instead of allowing them to control you, find a way for you to convert it to work to your advantage. And worry and stress, those things are going to put you in the hospital. They put a lot of people in the grave simply because we spend more time worrying about something we can't control instead of becoming solution oriented to figure out how we can address whatever the worry is. You got to understand, your stress and your anxiety, those levels, they're going to keep you from having a mind that's set on creating a solution. It's going to fill your head with worry. It's going to allow you to believe that nothing's going to work out. And guess what? The mind will basically do what you're thinking. So if you're already thinking it's not going to work out, in your mind, it's not going to work out. But on the other hand, when you make a conscious choice to say, well, I'm going to come up with a solution. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to address this. And the way to do it, one of the ways to do it rather, is to just simply stop stressing. Stop worrying, because you can't do anything about it anyway. Oh, hey, my guest just showed up. I was about to freestyle this thing. Here we go. I got, man, hold on. I'm bringing on an incredible guest who, first off, had me worried because I was like, yo, I don't know if I'm gonna have to freestyle. But that's a whole different story.
I wouldn't leave you hanging, John. I'm literally 3 weeks new into Boston, so I'm still trying to get like everything situated.
Listen,
oh my gosh, it's been a journey.
I'm gonna tell you, Tim, I understand. Trust me, no big. But I'm glad that I actually have you on the show because I am so excited. Let me tell you, the one reason I literally just completed the manuscript of my latest book.
Oh, wow.
And so now, of course, I want to find the lady that's written 10 books and,
well, actually, that number has gone up.
see? And, but being serious, what's incredible about that is that, you talk about shifting shifting priorities so that, you know what, you can complete tasks. I mean, literally, the title of your book is, put down the phone and pick up.
I did.
But you know what? It's the one thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to. Distractions, whether it's a phone or a television, or some excuse to not do what you're going to do. Some people have this intention of doing whatever. Let's use the book analogy. Some people have a tendency to want to write a book. And you know what ends up happening? Procrastination sets in to the point where they will find these ways to justify that why they can't write this book.
That's because a lot of it comes from doubt and fear.
You know,
Because a lot of people don't have a background in writing. They think that, I don't know, I guess they take a look at somebody like me who's been writing their entire life, but they're new to, my work. And they see that I have 11 books published. They see that I've written all these articles. And I think some of them just start to feel this intimidation, like, oh, well, I haven't done nearly as much as she has, but they're missing the point. I might be 42 now, and I might have all this stuff published now, but I had to start from somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, you can't allow where you are in this moment to dictate what could be 6 months from now, a year from now, because you never know, but you have to be willing to take that risk and put that work in. And it doesn't have to be hard work. I find that whatever you tell yourself, whatever your mindset is, if you think a project is going to be scary or daunting, then guess what? It probably will be. But if you go into it wanting to have fun, not having to prove yourself to anyone or receive outside validation, if you go into it wanting it to just be fun because you were called to do it, I mean, it goes a lot smoother. That's all I'm saying.
but you know what? That right there is exactly what you said. The reason why most people won't try. I I recently read a book. Well, second time reading it actually, but it was called "The Courage to Be Disliked,"
Good
and
title.
it's by a man named Ishiro Kashimi. And what's interesting about it is the reason why most people won't do what's in their heart, in their mind, is because they're so afraid that someone else will invalidate it. But once you get the courage to be like, I don't care. There there are 8 billion people in this world. Somebody will gravitate to what I'm doing.
A lot of people will. You just have to be willing to put it out there and
And
be authentic.
absolutely. I mean, look, we circle our lives around the 20 to 40 people we know. And we assume that those people have the end all be all when it comes to, and that's a big part of the reason why so many people go into some kind of mental discord and and won't do the things that they can do. I mean, some people will literally shoot themselves in the foot and kill their $1 million idea because their cousin Roro said it wasn't going to be good.
I love that name, Roro.
I mean,
There's plenty of Roros and Pookies and you name it out there. So.
yes. And I mean, let me ask you, when you first started doing your work, what since we're speaking about apprehensions, what were some of the things that had you thinking, I don't know if I can do this? And then,
well, okay, let me get more clarity. Do you mean with my writing or life
yes,
coaching? Okay,
with the writing, and then we'll go into the life coaching.
Okay, when it came to the writing, okay, here I go, not wanting to be full of myself, but it doesn't matter because I'm telling the truth.
Right.
I don't really feel like I went through a phase where I didn't believe in my writing because I started so young. meaning
Okay.
it was something that showed and presented itself very early on in my life. Like I was 9 years old when I wrote my first short story and turned it into a little book for my mom and showed it to my pop, who I always considered both my mother and my grandfather to be very intellectual, like highly intellectual people. And they both taught me well. And what I found is that writing came naturally to me. I loved it. I loved reading books because my mother used to read to me starting very early. She taught me how to read and write at a very early age. She started at like 2, teaching me how to do that. And she also said that she used to read to me while she was pregnant with me. So that was just something that developed while I was in utero. And I always felt like, because I'm the type of person where, you know, my way of thinking might be a little different than a lot of people, but I totally believe in past lives. And I believe that writing is something that I've carried on throughout multiple lifetimes. So it came naturally to me. A lot of things come naturally to me. Um, so as far as like apprehensions, the only time it ever really showed itself is when I got to college and when I was studying to be a social worker. Not so much the English literature degree because that was easy. That was almost like a continuation of high school to me. But when it came to social work and learning how to write in a different format, um, instead of MLA, it was oh gosh, I can't remember the one where they use for the scientific research, but
APA.
that one made me feel like I was learning how to write all over again. I was like, what is this? Because like the way that you have to cite like
Right.
the sources
Right.
and everything, it felt backwards to me from MLA form. So that was tricky. I did not like that type of writing. I knew that that wasn't where I wanted to go in terms of like any type of professional writing career. And then when it came to writing books, because I've read so many over the years, I'm the type of person where if you show me something, I can deconstruct it very easily and take it apart very easily. So when it came to books, I started doing a lot of research. And I knew that nonfiction was where I was gravitating by the time I was ready to become an author. Not that I don't love fiction, I love fiction, but I knew that's not where I wanted to start my writing career. So going into becoming an author, I did my research. I looked at so many different books. I made like put like little post-it tags and like, you know, just saw how they did like each section with the headings and just how they started from like start to finish. And creating an outline has been crucial in terms of my writing because I feel like once you have an outline, and this goes for nonfiction and fiction, you have like a guide somewhere that you know you're going to end up. You know what the end result is supposed to be. So that kind of removes a lot of the apprehension or the fears that I had. Now, when I published my first book, I was nervous because I was like, you know, here I am, this first time author. I've been writing for years, but this is my first book. And it meant a lot to me. It really did. It was definitely something that I was divinely guided to do. So I put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself. Like nobody else was doing it. It was me because I self published it. I didn't have this big time publisher, like, you know, putting all this pressure, like, oh, we have to sell this number of books, you know, the first go around and you have to promote. Now I did promote, but doing it myself and doing it my way, it kind of lessened some of the stress that I was feeling, even though I was still feeling it from myself, nobody else.
Well, you know, if you nowadays
Hmm.
self-publishing is a bigger arena than getting
It
a
is.
publisher. Look, back in the day, the publishers controlled everything and they
Uh-huh.
told you this. Now, what's interesting is major publishers are becoming less and less relevant because of the ability of self publishing. There are so many people that have incredible opportunities, ideas, stories that publishers would not, the random houses of the world or whatever, what have you, or Don't let me throw that name out there, but you know what I mean. But the point that I'm making is there are those large publishing entities that if you don't seem like you're going to make a lot of money for them, you're not worth their time. And a big part of that has
Right.
probably been a discourage for a lot of authors because, everybody's like, I mean, it wasn't like Stephen King found his thing overnight. It wasn't like, I mean, everybody hears a story about J.K. Rowling getting turned down like 12 times for Harry Potter.
Oh, she's been such an inspiration to me.
You
Oh
know,
my goodness.
oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you something. What's interesting, another part of this whole thing is you have to get tough skin because the truth of the matter is that A, everybody's not going to like what you do. B, another part another part of life is the fact that a large group of people may actually be envious of the fact that you're doing something that's in their mind too big for perhaps you because it's too big for them.
And you know what? That falls into one of the reasons why I gifted myself this fresh start in Boston. Because I felt like, even though I was 42, I just felt like I couldn't necessarily be myself, or I felt like I had outgrown New Jersey and the life that I was living there. And we've talked about this,
Yep.
we've talked about this before. And I needed a change. And you know how I was guided to make this move anyway. And it was just like, it's time basically to get out of your comfort zone. So, doing things that are making me nervous, but things that I've wanted to do, that's what I'm doing now. And it's very rewarding. It really is.
Because first off, I gotta say congratulations to you
Oh,
because
thank you.
so many people have created this false apprehension that keeps them anchored to a situation. Jim Carrey
Ah,
said
another
this.
great one. Yeah.
I mean, he said so many people use fear or use practicality as fear, you know,
Uh-huh.
and instead of just admitting that they're just scared to do something, they make this justification for practicality. So in their mind, nobody else, in their mind, it's like, hey, man, the reason why I didn't start that business was because, you know, I have a dog that I have to feed and I have to make sure that I'm there for the dog. And Lord, that's going to take a business is going to take time away from me feeding Rover. And, and again, I mean, it's like I'm being funny in that respect, but the truth of the matter is that
No, that's how
is
we think.
that is exactly how we think. We
Yes.
find these justifications
Hmm.
that will keep us from doing the things that we need to do. And then when it doesn't happen, we're 80 years old on our deathbed about to die, having what Bronnie Ware said, 5 regrets of the dying.
Oh,
And I mean, and she actually she said one of the biggest regrets was the fact that that person chose not to live an authentic life. They chose to live a life that other people have for them. You are not choosing that, Tamika. I mean, do me a favor. Talk to me about mystical fire ascension, because you earlier you kind of indicated that you I'm quote unquote you see things differently is the way we'll say it. You
I
know.
do.
So talk about that a little bit.
All right. Well, my my journey to even starting Mystical Fire Ascension Life Coaching was it was wild. That's the best way I can describe it. In 2022, a long-term relationship ended, and that in and of itself set me on a course of rediscovering who I was and getting back to my most authentic self. In that relationship, I really lost sight of who I was, things that I wanted in my life. The more he stopped giving, I started receiving less and less and less, and I started dimming my own light. And what started happening after, we broke up, and we had been living together as well. So that totally, changed the trajectory of everything in my life. So I had to start looking for a new place and all of this stuff. And my abilities, which we all have, like the psychic abilities, they call them the clair. So the clair audience, the clair sentience, all of that stuff started being heightened. And I started receiving all these wonderful visions of myself, not only with a man that I have yet to meet, but yes, but married, having kids, all the things that I had wanted, in my life, a beautiful, healthy marriage, like all the visions were just, it was almost like a part of me was like, wow, this looks almost too good to be true. But, spirit and source or God, whatever term you want to use, was like, why do you think that it's too much for you? Basically, so that in and of itself. And then I started getting guided to become a life coach because I have experience of being a social worker. And I loved being a social worker, and I was very good at what I did. I was. It's not like I struggled to do the work. It's just I struggled to do the work while not sacrificing my own energy. And it's one of those jobs where if you're a highly empathetic person like I am, if you pick up on other people's and absorb their energy very easily, which I do, it might not be the field for you unless you're able to shield yourself from that and just pour all this self-love into yourself and make sure that you're okay. And at the time when I was a social worker, I had a lot going on. I was helping to take care of my mother, who has since, passed on, even though she's always with me. She's always with me. But yeah, becoming a social worker, it scared me because I had started a business before, Celestial Publishing. And that was like a real deal LLC that I had started. And I published my first two books under that, imprint that I had started. And it got to the point where I kind of fell out of love with the business, didn't really know where to take it next. Like I knew that the next step could have been taking on clients and helping them to publish their work, but that wasn't the route that I wanted to go. So I let it go. But then when I kept getting this guidance to start Mystical Fire, I was very resistant because I'm like, I've already done the business thing. Like I don't know if I can, number one, handle it. Always did want to have a business of my own. I always wanted to have one with my partner as well. That was something that I always wanted to do. And it could still potentially happen. Like, I'm not going yet, but
Right.
but the point is, I was very, very nervous. I was, and I just had to start doing things scared. And I don't know why the term life coach scared me as much as it did. I think it's just the fact that you hear from, depending on who you speak with, that there's so many life coaches out there. The market's very saturated. You have to be distinctive. You have to niche down. And these are all the things that you hear. And there might be some validity in it, but you can't let that hinder you from being yourself and putting, what you have to offer out there. Because even though I am a spiritual life coach, there are things that I bring to the table and do it my way that you couldn't do because you're unique and you do your things your way, just like I'm unique and I do my services my way. So that was something that I've, struggled with. I'll admit I had to get to that point. And, being authentic, returning to my most authentic self, that also made me a little daunting because I'm like, well, you'll hear the phrase, oh, she's just too much, but no, I'm not too much. I'm just being me. And a lot of the people that we named, Jim Carrey, for instance, some people would think he's too much, but guess what? He's just being himself. And you know what? By him being himself, he attracted his audience. Not everybody likes Jim Carrey, but I do. I love Jim Carrey.
Right.
So, being authentic is very, very crucial when you're starting any type of business, and especially Mystical Fire, which I love. I absolutely love my business because it is an extension of me, and it's something that came about while I was going through a transformation in my life. And I'm not finished yet.
Well, first off, congratulations to you. And the big thing is, people don't understand life coaches. The reason why there are a lot of life coaches in this world is because there's a lot of damn problems.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and there are a group of people who are brave enough to say, you know what, I've had this problem, but I'm going to talk about this problem, which is the reason why there's saturation. And that type of saturation is not a bad thing.
It's not.
You
It's
know,
not.
it's just that you're right. I mean, yeah, people, you do have to niche down. Like, for instance, me, I literally rebranded, and I I am a grief empowerment strategist. And people will ask, what is that?
Hmm.
Really simple. It's like, listen, I'm that person that will sit down and come up with a way for you to be able to manage the challenges that you're going through and use them to be able to act as fuel. Like you said, what your circumstance brought you to become a life coach. That those are some of the things that I would do to talk to a person. What is it that you've gone through that you want to do? You know, and talk about the whole mystical part about this thing. Like
Well,
do you,
I mentioned some of it earlier, meaning like, the clairaudience and my psychic abilities, which again, we all have them, but we've been so programmed and taught to either fear them, think that they're evil, depending on your upbringing, religion, all of that stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, how could anything that comes from source or our creator be bad? Like, those are gifts that were given to us. They should be nurtured, they should be cherished, just like our ability to see and to hear and to feel. All of those things are part of us, and I incorporate that into my business through just the way that I interact with people. I can honestly say that one of my best gifts or assets is the fact that when I meet with people, whether I'm doing groups or one on one, I have the ability to put most people at ease. I usually do. And people have the tendency to just be able to open up very easily with me because I I bring this lightness and this upbeatness when I'm working with people. And I find that some life coaches, depending on their personality and what they're talking about, like I'm just thinking about some of the ones that I see on social media that I used to allow to intimidate me because they seemed so perfect and polished and put together. And then as I started watching their content more, I'm like, yeah, they look that way, but where's the soul?
right, right.
Where's the smiles? Where's the, you know what I mean? And you want somebody who obviously is going to help you to achieve whatever your goals are. But there's so many different ways of doing that. And healing, it can be heavy, it can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be like this long, stressful, like unbearable process. You can lighten it up and make it more enjoyable. So when I'm doing sessions with clients, I hear from spirit all the time. They're constantly talking to me. So that in and of itself helps me when I'm listening to people because they will tell me like certain questions to ask. when to just, allow the person to keep talking, that sort of thing. And I love that. And sometimes I do see visions when I'm, working with the client, which depending on what the vision is, sometimes I'll tell them about it and sometimes I'll just keep it to myself, depending on what it is. But I'll allow that to guide me when I'm doing my interactions and my sessions with clients. And I also do astrology. I'm a self-taught astrologer, which I love. That's something that I was blessed with an amazing mother. And I'm one of those people that believes that Earth is a school. It's a learning school. And I do believe that we actually choose who our parents are. And no, I'm not the only person that thinks this either. There are plenty of people in the spiritual community that have had like past life
Right.
regressions, and they've seen themselves like choosing their parents, and why they chose their parents. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, we choose our parents because there's certain lessons in this life that we came here to experience and came here to learn. We didn't come here to just stay the same. So, using that in my business as well. And I offer oracle card readings as well. So I'm very multifaceted. I love incorporating this stuff into sessions with clients, as well as breath work, meditation, things to that nature.
Well, that is interesting because you s- what you just said, Tamika, is what so many people, like you say, are kind of afraid of. But um, there was a doctor at University of Miami, and he's written a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. And
Okay.
what was interesting about this gentleman, he is I believe, like a an analyst, some that type of psychiatrist. But it all started where a young lady came in to see him because she was having these crazy visions, all these things were happening. She thought she was going crazy.
Been there.
But
I have.
what was interesting was that all of his medical, knowledge, he was like, I can't seem to help this woman. But what he ended up doing was he finally hypnotized her. When he hypnotized her, he found that she had over 100 souls in her body. And the last 6 or 7 of them were causing her this form of anxiety. So when you talk about the past life and all these different things, you know, people don't want to believe this stuff exists. But the truth of the matter is, we are all, there's some form of us that when we die, we gonna come back somehow. And hey, some people might come back as a cockroach because you were, excuse my language, you were an asshole in life, you know. And some people will come back as a beautiful peacock because they were awesome. And again, some people, it's like, hey, it, it's interesting because I saw this thing that was funny. This movie about a guy that died, and he was a total jerk, and so God paid him back. He came back as a woman, and it was so again stuff like that. Now, let me ask you: when you work with clients and you may tell them something that they don't necessarily want to hear,
Mm.
how do you address that so that they understand that I'm not the one that's saying this. This is your aura. It's like,
Okay, well, I did have that come up. I did an event before I left New Jersey where I there were I think 15 women that signed up to get oracle card readings, which I will never ever do that many in one night ever again. It was supposed to end at 9:30. It didn't end until almost midnight. Because when you're doing readings with people, even though I tried to set my timer as best I could, you start talking. You start talking, things start coming through, and I was receiving a lot of messages. And I had some very resistant women who didn't even want to hear the good stuff, the good stuff that I had for them. I'm like, this one woman in particular. I mean, if she ever sees this, I hope she was finally able to change her mindset and believe that this was actually going to happen for her. Because again, I've been in this situation where you see things that are going to happen for you and they seem too good to be true. And so I'm telling her that with the cards and what my guides were telling me is that she literally had the potential of meeting like her soulmate, like the one that she was meant to marry. And because she had been so jaded from past hurts and everything, she was struggling with the idea and the notion that she could actually find a man, or that there would be a man out there to actually love her, cherish her, be loyal to her, and actually want to be with her. And I told her, I'm like, look, here's what I tell everybody when it comes to oracle card readings. And this goes for me too, because I've received them from other people. Sometimes, I don't listen to myself, even though all the signs are there and they're like, we've literally told you everything. Sometimes, because of how we're programmed and conditioned here, you look outside yourself for answers when everything really is within you. And so I told her that when it comes to readings, you take them with a grain of salt, meaning what I was picking up in that moment is what was possible for her in that moment. Things can change because of how we think, decisions that we make, and all kinds of things. But I told her, if this is something that you really want, then change your mindset about it. Believe that it's actually possible for you. Start working on those wounds, that trauma, so that when this man finally does come into your life, you don't push him away and miss out on what could potentially be a very beautiful life. And then I've seen it also the other way for people that, when you're basically trying to tell them, no, it's not necessarily the other person, it really is you. Which again, I had to go through that myself. So look, and I tell my clients that I'm like, look, I'm telling you what I've had to tell myself repeatedly, that it's not in this situation, it's not all the other person, it really is you. And these are certain things that you can choose to work on, but you don't have to, because with life coaching, you can make suggestions to people and help guide them as much as possible. But if they're not willing to do the work, then I mean, how are you supposed to get results doing the same thing that hasn't worked for you in the past? Maybe it's time to take a different approach and look within and see, well, every time you're in a relationship and like XYZ happens, how do you react to it? Are you open to having conversations with someone? Do you constantly jump the gun? Are you making it impossible for the other person to approach you and be open? And these are just like certain things that can come up with everyone. So yeah, I mean, it can be challenging whether you have good news for someone or not so pleasing news for someone. Sometimes you just can't please, and you're not in the business to please anyone, but sometimes they're just not going to hear you, whether the news is fantastic or the news requires them to do some work. And honestly, in both situations, it did really require both women to do some work. So,
well, I mean, look, before I let you go, I want to say this. like you're right. Life coaching is a business where we can suggest a person to make a change, but if they're not willing to, then they're going to they're going to turn around and say, "Oh, this doesn't work." It's because it's just like you said. It, hey, two people in a relationship, and there's one person. She's like, "I wish he'd be," or "I wish she'd be," and then you turn around and be like, "Oh no, maybe you need to be." You know,
Yeah.
that's what life coaching is. Life coaching is telling someone that you need to make a shift. It's, you can't put it this way. I'm gonna say it like this, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But you can't you can't find your greatness in the brokenness that you already are right now.
So well put. Yes.
You know, and it's like,
Absolutely.
I mean, there are a lot of people. What they want is they want to find happiness within their brokenness, and that's just not gonna happen. You know what, Tamika? We can have this conversation all day, but ladies and gentlemen, Tamika Murray, author, life coach. You know, again, her book. I mean, listen, just the title alone should tell it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it bottom line, yeah, put down your phone so you can pick up your pen. You know, and again, that can be a metaphor for whatever. But ha- do me a favor before I go.
Uh-huh.
How can you have people touch base with you?
Okay. Really, really great question. All right. So you can go to Mystical Fire Ascension Life Coaching.com. And if that title is very long, that's okay. You can find me on social media. All you have to do is look up my name, Tamika M. Murray, and you will see me pop up. Or you can Google me. It's very easy to find me on social media because I've kind of conditioned the algorithm to always look for me. So if you type in Tamika M. Murray, this is the face that you're going to find most
Okay.
of the time. So I'm very
Okay.
easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Just joined actually Instagram threads, and I'm really liking it. I'm liking the
Okay.
women and the entrepreneurs that I'm gravitating towards. So it's actually nice on there. I like it.
I mean, I hear. Listen, I put your link tree out here.
Thank
So
you.
no
Okay, and
problem.
that's one of the best ways to find me because it's all there.
I mean, hey, I figure, but again, thank you so much, Tamika, because this this shows that a person can do some magnificent. I mean, you wrote 10 books in such a short amount of time. You know, and it takes concentration to do. I mean, literally. I, look, I'm not gonna brag myself, but I mean, literally, I sat down and I wrote 8 chapters in 2 months. You know, and it's just like, okay, wow. Now before, I didn't even think I could write my name right. You know, it, it's incredible. But again, I mean, look, Tamika, thank you again for your opportunity to have a conversation today. Um, I will put all of Tamika's information into the chat information. So if you do want to be able to have a reading, have a session, she also helps to offer guidelines on book writing as
I
well.
do.
So again, I will definitely make sure to put all that information into the follow up links. So I mean into the follow up chat. So thank you again. I appreciate your time, and Tamika.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I commend you for getting started on that book because at least you're doing that step that a lot of people won't even take, which is just to start and to keep going. So don't stop.
Hey, definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory. I'm Jay Lewis III. Again, I had an incredible guest, Miss Tamika Murray. Thank you again. Everybody have a good one. See you next week.